in teaching, let's say, pronunciation, or what are the problems that may affect teaching and learning pronunciation. So let's start working on this research project. First of all, we should know the theoretical background, or what theories support teaching and learning pronunciation. As you see, with the shift of perspective on theories of learning from behavioristic to cognitive and later to constructivist, various teaching methods has emerged in language teaching. So all these teaching methods change how we consider teaching pronunciation as a subheading for language teaching and learning. So with this swing of pendulum in language teaching methods that have characterized the evolution of language pedagogy, the teaching of pronunciation has undergone the same methodological changes as I told you before. But when we are talking about teaching of pronunciation, generally we have two fundamental approaches. One of them is considered as intuitive, imitative approach, and the other one as analytic, linguistic approach. So when we are talking about intuitive, imitative approach, it is based on second language learners' abilities in imitating the sound and rhythms of target language without receiving any explicit instruction. So it means you learn pronunciation indirectly without teaching it directly. For example, through listening, through speaking, or some other, let's say, implicit teaching techniques. But when we are talking about analytic linguistic approach, it provides learners with explicit instruction. So a part of your curriculum is teaching pronunciation, actually. So you may work on phonetic symbols, for example, different parts of vocal tract called articulators and vocal apparatus to draw learners' attention to the sound and rhythm of target language. So, but actually, when we are talking about analytic linguistic approach, it is not something that replaced the first one, intuitive, imitative approach. It is something as a supplement, as a method that completes the first one. But the second one, analytic linguistic, cannot be replaced for intuitive, imitative approach. So we should keep these two approaches in our mind when we are talking about how to teach or even learn pronunciation. But when we are talking about development of teaching models, that all of them led to the development of pronunciation, teaching, and learning, we have different methods. For example, first we had grammar translation method. After that, direct method introduced. After that, audiolingual method. Then innovative methods, for example, silent wave method. Then community language learning method, what we call it CLL method. And one of the latest ones, communicative approach. But let's see what happened during these developments. Unlike grammar translation method with little or no attention on pronunciation, direct method and later audiolingual method have brought the teaching of pronunciation into focus. So actually in grammar translation method, we didn't have considerable attention to pronunciation, whether learning or teaching. But after that, in direct method and audiolingual method, we started thinking about teaching pronunciation implicitly and explicitly in our curriculum. Indirect method pronunciation was taught through an intuitive, imitative approach, as I said, we do not have any implicit instruction, but it is among the purpose of our teaching plan. So L2 learner or second language learner imitated a model. That this model may be teacher or maybe a recording, a clip or something like that. In the 1890s, with the emergence of reform movement in language teaching and development of international phonetic alphabet, audiolingual method made use of both intuitive, imitative, and analytic linguistic approach. So when we started audiolingual method, we considered both approaches in teaching and learning pronunciation, whether the one that pay attention to implicit or direct instruction of pronunciation in curriculum, whether the one that pays attention to indirect teaching of pronunciation. Both of them are considered in audiolingual method. So a model for pronouncing a word or a phrase was presented to the learner to imitate and repeat it in audiolingual method. Also, the teacher took advantage of phonetic symbols, visual transcription, or articulatory charts to adequately demonstrate the correct pronunciation of various target sounds. But after that, with the advent of cognitive approach in the 1960s, the importance of achieving native-like pronunciation had been underrated since it was regarded as an unattainable goal in learning. And alternatively, teaching grammar structure and vocabulary item overemphasized. So we had, let's say, we had a time or a period in which, again, teaching and learning pronunciation underrated and more attention was paid to grammar structure and vocabulary items instead of pronunciation. But during the 1970s, innovative methods emerged. So they developed different ways to deal with pronunciation. For example, silent way method made use of sound color charts that represented all the vowels and consonant sounds of a target language in different colors, and fiddle chart, which contained all the possible spelling patterns for each sound to teach pronunciation. So all of them are some new techniques or strategies or teaching styles that introduced in teaching pronunciation effectively, actually. But after that, community language learning method developed and it employed human-computer technique. That is, students could ask their teacher to provide them with the correct pronunciation of a word or a phrase to offer learners opportunity to practice pronunciation. So as you see, whatever we had development in teaching models, at the same time, development happened in teaching pronunciation as a subheading of language learning and teaching. But as we said, one of the newest approaches is communicative approach in teaching language. So the introduction of communicative approach, which seems to be presently dominant in language pedagogy right now, has called for a subtle change in teaching of pronunciation. A certain threshold level of pronunciation has been established for non-native speakers of English to be regarded as communicatively competent in English language. So in practice, communicatively oriented teaching models have tried to use a variety of techniques and materials that have traditionally been used to teach segmental features of language. When we say segmental features of language, we refer to individual sounds. For example, what is the difference between the sound V and W, or how should we try to pronounce them correctly? It means segmental features of language. So the student should listen and imitate. Phonetic training is part of the instruction. Minimal pair drills, contextual minimal pairs, visual aids, developmental approximation drills, or practice of vowel shift and stress shift related to affixation, reading aloud, recitation, recording of learners' production. All of them are some parts of the teaching techniques for teaching pronunciation in communicative approach. So later, since these techniques have been appeared to be theoretically incompatible with discourse-based approaches to communicative language pedagogy, teaching suprasegmental features of language was introduced. So when we say suprasegmental features of language, we are talking about the rhythm, stress, and intonation. So they were another parts of, let's say, the pendulum. So actually it refers to what happened during time in the development of language teaching and subsequently pronunciation teaching. But actually, what should be considered in teaching pronunciation? When we are talking about pronunciation, we should be aware that teaching pronunciation is not just a linguistic matter. Language teachers need to consider factors related to language learners, such as their age, attitude toward target language, motivation to learn, aptitude, or even type of prior second language instruction, and many more factors that may interfere in teaching pronunciation, whether positively or negatively. But in order to make participants involved in this discussion, I would like to ask you whether you know the effect of age in teaching or learning pronunciation, how age can interfere in teaching or learning pronunciation. I would like to get feedback from the audience. So any idea about this point?
Excuse me, sir. May I give my opinion dealing with the problem you posed?
Sure.
Yeah. Let me introduce myself. My name is Abdul Rashid. I am from Pakuan University. Dealing with the age in learning pronunciation, in my point of view, when someone learn pronunciation when they have been quite old or their ability in pronouncing a foreign language, but if our students start learning pronunciation at the very young age, okay, what is it called as a critical period hypothesis? Yeah, they will be able to pronounce the foreign language as fluent as possible. It is quite different with the one who will learn pronunciation when they have been quite old. That's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your feedback. Actually, let me ask you another question. So do you think we need implicit instruction or explicit instruction with younger learners? Which one is more effective?
Um, in my point of view, it might be implicit instruction. Yeah, we can actually
Yes,
provide our young learners with songs or probably with listening activity, more listening activity.
exactly. So in younger learners, we need implicit instruction. Let's say it is more effective in teaching and learning pronunciation. But one
Okay.
more question is related to the reason. Why do you think implicit instruction is more effective?
For young learners?
Yes.
Okay, because well, again, in my point of view, young learners actually they do not really interested with explicit instruction. They sometimes only have a very limited time for being focused. So if we just give them more instruction to do this and that, I believe that they will get bored. But if we ask them to do something which is quite interesting for them to do, something like listening to a song or doing chunking or something, I hope so.
Okay, Pak Abdur Rosid, I think
Yeah.
the question and answer session will be after the presentation, yeah, and you can chat, yeah, in the chat box. So actually after this, Reza, and we will have also a kind of what is it, promotion of Vision Journal, yeah, from the army, yeah, our editor, yeah. So I think you can answer the questions after the presentation, Reza. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank you very much.
you're welcome. So let's talk about this point. Actually, when we are talking about younger learners, especially children under the age of 7 or 6, definitely we should use implicit instruction. Why? Because their mind is not well prepared to teach some, for example, phonetic symbols or discuss about different kinds of sound. It is something meaningless for younger children. So we should consider implicit instruction. And the other point that is very important when you are going to teach younger children or younger learners is related to vocal cords. You know, I'm teaching at a medical university. So when we are talking about vocal cords, at the age of 7, maximum, at the age of 7, all vocal cord matured or developed fully. So after this time, it is impossible to teach the pronunciation as well as the word are pronounced by a native speaker. So this is the reason that we say if a person moved to an English-speaking country after the age of 7, whatever he or she tries, it is impossible to speak exactly like a native speaker because the vocal cords form and develop fully. And after this age, it is not possible to train the vocal cord to pronounce all words exactly similar to native speaker. But we may try to be native-like speaker, but it is not possible to be exactly like a native speaker. This is the point. So it is very important when we are talking about younger learners, we should shift through implicit instruction. But when we go to older learners, because of the development of vocal cords, we should try to train them directly. What are alveolar, what are vowels, what are consonants, how should we place our tongue in the pronunciation of each sound, for example. All of them are related to teaching pronunciation. Okay, let's get back to our PowerPoint. So as we said, age can be considered based on the justification we provided. Then attitude toward target language or motivation to learn, aptitude or type of prior second language instruction. Sometimes we have interference between what you practiced before and what you are practicing right now. So it is very important that what kind of second language instruction you had before and what you are doing right now. We will discuss about them more in next slides. So teaching practice is likely to be affected by teachers' belief about how language is learned. And this is one of the reasons we want to know the perceptions of teachers here. Now, let's see what are the problems that motivated me to do a research on pronunciation teaching. You know, in both in theory and practice, pronunciation has been a low priority for second language educators. And pronunciation teaching, which puts emphasis on individual sound and prosody, cannot fully integrate it with other language skills like reading or writing, or let's say teachers do not know exactly how is it possible to integrate pronunciation teaching with other or four main language skills such as reading and writing. And we have a long-held belief that an overt focus on pronunciation is ineffective and even extraneous to help learners achieve communicative competence. So this is one of the reasons that teachers unwelcome pronunciation teaching, especially in explicit instruction for pronunciation. So in this study, that was done in the context of Iran, no study thus far has investigated teachers' belief and cognition regarding pronunciation to see what happens in the minds of instructors about teaching pronunciation. And very little is known about Iranian instructor pronunciation teaching perception and practices. So this study was an attempt to fill this gap in the literature. Based on what I said, some research questions formulated for our study. For example, the first one, which aspects of pronunciation receive more attention by Iranian EFL teachers? Or let's say, how often different pronunciation aspects are taught by teachers? The second one, what are the self-reported practices of Iranian EFL teachers regarding pronunciation when teaching adult learners? Or let's say, how often different pronunciation activities are used by teachers? And the third research question, what are Iranian EFL teachers' belief and opinion on pronunciation learning and teaching? And finally, what pronunciation problems experienced by learners, are reported by teachers? So this study is going to answer these questions in a mixed method study in which we are trying to try to get the perception of instructors. So the results of this study, we hope that the results of this study may complete effort exerted in other studies and aims to advance knowledge about second language pronunciation instruction in Iran. And it may be a source, or let's say a study that can be replicated by other researchers, for example, in Indonesian context. And it may provide implications for teachers, educators, administrators, and teacher training programs in the context of Iran and other similar context. Next one, it may help teacher to rethink about the teaching of English pronunciation in second language instruction. Teachers may also start thinking about their approaches in addressing different aspects of pronunciation, which they have ignored in teaching pronunciation in the classroom practices. So all of them are some, let's say, implications of the study or some of the outcomes for the present study. But let's discuss about some of the findings in literature. First of all, most of the research showed that pronunciation has been ignored in both hypothetical and instructional approaches to second language learning, because pronunciation instruction with its focus on individual sounds or prosody doesn't always match with teachers who advocate communicative language teaching. As we said before, sometimes EFL teachers think that teaching pronunciation cannot match with communicative language teaching. This is one of the reasons. So this made pronunciation to be disfavored, both with researchers and practitioners, mainly because of the belief that an obvious focus on pronunciation is unproductive and even inessential in helping learners to attain communicative competence, and the perception that other language skills are not combined easily with pronunciation, such as reading or writing. All of them led to let's say, a demotivation among the instructor to pay specific attention to pronunciation teaching. So when it comes to second language learning, elements like, as we said before, elements like age of learning, native language, and aptitude are supposed to play a vital part with pronunciation than with other skills. And some other research showed that placement tests designed to assign students to different levels of instruction normally do not take pronunciation skills into consideration. So as you see, somehow pronunciation ignored in different aspects of language teaching. And also some other parts of the research showed that learners in language classes may be at the same level in terms of their overall second language skills, but may be various in their pronunciation. So it is again another problem. So this variability challenges instructors who often lack training in the teaching of pronunciation and those who are recurrently confronted with course books, which vary extremely in their treatment of pronunciation. So another part of the problem refers to the knowledge of instructors themselves. Sometimes instructors themselves do not know how to teach pronunciation. This is another problem. So it should be noted that this training is but when we are talking about this point, let's go to the next part. And some other research showed most beneficial activities for advancing pronunciation. For example, some of them focus on segmental, as I told before, individual sounds such as we and we, and suprasegmental such as stress, rhythm, or intonation. Most research introduce some effective strategies in teaching pronunciation. For example, high flexibility training, or the training in which learners are uncovered to numerous speakers on the assumption that listening to highly variable symbols of target sounds makes strong perceptual learning possible. But these effective strategies, it should be noted that these effective strategies are run in controlled lab settings or delivered via technology rather than setting an ordinary classroom. So it is left as an empirical question, the degree to which such training may be efficient in a classroom setting. So for those of you who are interested in research in this area, you should try to get these effective strategies and see if they are effective in real language teaching environment, let's say ordinary classroom or not, without using, let's say, lab or using technology. So other parts of research showed that corrective feedback and repeated exposure to different words pronunciation are some effective techniques in improving the learner's pronunciation. But let's see, what are the factors affecting students' ability in learning second language phonological features? One of them, as we said, the speaker's age. The other one, linguistic factor, including the effect of the learner's first language on second language acquisition. The third one is sociocultural factors, such as the desire to keep an L1 accent, first language accent, or obtain a native English accent. For example, for some learners of English, you may understand that they are speaking English with their native or their first language accent. But for some other speakers, you may understand that they controlled their first language accent and they are trying to follow a British or American accent. So this is the point that may affect the learning and teaching of pronunciation. The other one is affective factor, including the learner's attitudinal and emotional asserts. It is also very effective in teaching and learning pronunciation. And learners' option or participation in instructional decision. If you involve learners in, let's say, determining instruction style or method, definitely it can affect the output, that is learning. So all time we say the teacher or instructor should try to involve the learners' feedback about how they can learn better and integrate these ideas and feedback into teaching style or teaching strategies. The other one is curriculum factors that affect learning of phonological features. But what are they? For example, integration of pronunciation in the English language learning curriculum. Sometimes pronunciation is ignored in the curriculum. In such situation, it is clear that you may not spend enough time on teaching pronunciation because it is not included in the curriculum. The other one is evaluation of speech intelligibility, whether the curriculum pay attention to the evaluation or not. The other one, a variable list of phonological hierarchies that interchange between either suprasegmental or segmental, as we explained before. And the next one, target pronunciation patterns, such as providing students with a diversity of native speakers and non-native speaker models. Setting practical objectives for students. All of them are related to the role of curriculum in learning pronunciation or phonological features of a language. They should be included in the curriculum. So whatever more attention is paid to pronunciation in the curriculum, it is clear that the output would be more satisfactory. The next factor is teacher factors, the role of teacher in learning pronunciation. The first one is related to the knowledge of phonology, that refers to subject matter knowledge. The second one, knowledge of methods and approaches for teaching pronunciation, let's say pedagogical content knowledge. And a teacher should know how to give a student feedback, whether delayed feedback is more effective, whether implicit feedback or explicit feedback, for example, is more effective. All of them should be considered by a language instructor in teaching pronunciation. And next one, giving a demonstration to learners, what they are actually doing. The teacher should make teaching and learning process as clear as possible for the learner. What is the purpose of the, let's say, the class, what they are going to do related to pronunciation, and what they as instructors expect from the learners in learning and practicing pronunciation. Everything should be clarified. And last one, establish pronunciation priorities. For example, first working on consonant, then working on vowels, and after working on vowels, you may shift to voiced and voiceless vowels, for example, and plan activities, assess students' progress, and make it possible for learners to both hear and produce sounds. So all of them should be considered by a teacher if the teacher wants to have an effective teaching of pronunciation to get a satisfactory output from his or her class. But now let's see what are key points in teaching pronunciation to beginning level English learners. Because in this research, we are considering perception of instructor based on the proficiency level of learners. So it is very important to point to key points in teaching pronunciation to beginning level, intermediate level, and advanced level English learners. First, for beginning level English learners, one of them is syllabus stress. So at the beginning level, English learners need to focus on the basics of pronunciation, not more. In general, the use of rote learning is best for this level. For example, the use of grammar chants is a great way to help a student pick up pronunciation skills through repetition. Teaching the International Phonetic Alphabet is too challenging at this point, as learners are already overwhelmed with the challenges of learning a language. So for beginning level English learners, it is not good to work on international phonetic alphabet. So let's see. Learning another alphabet for pronunciation is beyond the capability of most beginning level English learners. Certain patterns, such as silent letters in English and the pronunciation of ed in the simple past is a good starting point for future pronunciation drills. Students should also learn the difference between voiced and voiceless consonants. So all of them are what we should do for beginning level English learners when we are going to teach them pronunciation. So if I want to summarize what I said right now, one of them, as I said, is syllable stress. Students need to understand the multisyllabic words require syllable stress. So we should point out common syllable stress patterns. The other one, as I told you, we should work on voice and voiceless consonant. Teach the difference between voice and voiceless consonant. Have students touch their throat to note the difference between sound the and s, the sounds of letter Z and letter S, and sounds of letter F and V to demonstrate these differences in real world, let's say in this way. And the third one, we should work on silent letters. Point out examples of words with silent letters, such as the sound of letter B in comb, or ed ending in the past time for regular verbs. And working on silent final E. Teach the influence of the final silent E, generally making the vowel line. So we should highlight this point. Make sure to point out that there are many exceptions to this rule. For example, drive versus live. So there are some points that we can work on in teaching pronunciation to beginning level English learners. Okay, regarding the question, if you write them in the chat box, I will get back to the question after presentation, and I will try to answer all of them. No problem. So next part, okay, now we know what we should work on for beginning level English learner. So what are some of the activities that we can practice for beginning level pronunciation? Let's discuss about the activities or teaching techniques. One of them is slap that word. Slap that word is a fun game for learners, asking them to associate words that are posted on the wall of the classroom. This exercise will reinforce pronunciation patterns during a fun and competitive activity. The second one is read and rhyme. Rhyming game asks students to come up with words that rhyme with others presented on cards. So actually we have some cards, and you should rhyme the words with others based on cards. So they are some of the activities that we can practice for beginning level English learners. But let's go to intermediate level English learners. The key points. At this point, English learners will feel comfortable with relatively simple pronunciation patterns in English. So moving on to exercises using minimal pairs, for example, will help learners further refine the pronunciation of individual phonemes. Intermediate level learners should become aware of common word stress patterns as well as sentence stress type. At this point, students can also begin becoming familiar with international phonetic alphabet. So if I want to summarize again what I said, one of the key points is the use of minimal pairs. By minimal pairs, we mean understanding the small differences in pronunciation between similar words. That is a great way to help students notice these differences. For example, when we are talking about tap and top, or small and smell, or a book and back, it is the use of minimal pair. The other one, as I said, working on word stress patterns. It helps students improve their pronunciation by focusing on short sentences using standard word stem patterns, word stress pattern. For example, keyboard, and you highlight key in the word keyboard to show the place of stress. Or for conduct, you highlight duct as a verb. Second syllable in the word conduct as a verb and show it as the syllable for which we need stress, for example. Or let's say computer. Again, you highlight the second syllable pew to show that the stress should be on this syllable. Or microphone, highlighting my to show that the first syllable should be stressed. It is the use of word stress patterns. The other one, as I said, introduce stress and intonation. One of the best ways to help students is to focus their attention on the music of English through the use of stress and intonation. It is very important. As when we say stress, it refers to the emphasis laid on specific syllables or words of a sentence. But by intonation, we refer to the variation of the pitch as an individual speaks. Okay, now let's see what are some intermediate level pronunciation activities that we can practice in the class. One of them is International Phonetic Alphabet Symbols card game. This card game helps a student learn phonetic symbols. The other one is tongue twisters. By tongue twisters, we refer to focusing on some of the minor challenging, some of the more challenging phonemes. For example, we say, Peter Piper pick a peck of pickled peppers, or can you candy can. So they are called tongue twister, and through using this twister, you can practice pronunciation with intermediate level students or learners. Now let's switch to advanced level English learners. Improving pronunciation through a focus on stress and intonation is one of the best ways to improve higher intermediate to advanced level learners. At this level, students have a good grasp on the basics of each phoneme through the use of exercises such as minimal pairs and individual syllable stress. However, English learners at this level often focus too much on the correct pronunciation of each word rather than on the music of each sentence. To introduce the concept of stress and intonation and the role it plays in understanding, the students first need to understand the role of content and function words. So when we say content word, we refer to the word that carry the most meaning when we speak, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, while function words refer to the words that have very little meaning, such as prepositions, articles, pronouns, and auxiliary verbs. So next student should learn how to use sound scraping. It is a way of marking up text to help prepare for reading aloud. And finally, advanced level students should be capable of changing meaning through word stresses within sentences to bring out contextual meaning through pronunciation. So it helps learners become more expressive by taking sentence intonation skill to the next level. These examples use a method of bolding key content words and capitalizing the most important words chosen for the best emotional impact. So if I want to, again, summarize the activities I discussed right now, one of them is refine understanding of stress and intonation. So further students' understanding of stress and intonation by changing a particular word stress to change meaning. And the second one, use of register and function that refer to introducing the idea of changing through pronunciation, depending on how formal or informal the situation is. So when we say register, it is a way a speaker uses language differently in different circumstances.
Okay, Reza, Kafipour, I think I will, what is it? We will have a kind of advertisement or promotion of journal, vision journal from Miss Dwi Arni, yeah, Reza. So you only 3 or 5 minutes, yeah. Dwi Arni
Okay, no
is
problem.
ready for introducing vision journal. Come on, Dwi Arni.
Okay, check. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Your screen.
Yeah. Okay. I cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing, Mr. David.
Could you please stop share screen?
Should I stop sharing the file?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's very crowded. You can move to
Very crowded. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Right. Okay.
okay.
Okay, Mr. David, thanks for the opportunity, and Mr. Reza, I'm sorry for interrupting. Yeah, this is the introducing of. Can you see the screen, the presentation? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. I am Dwi Arni Siti Mardianti. You can call me Arni. I'm one of the editors from the Vision Journal, and I will use this opportunity to introduce the journal of English department in UIN Wali Songo Semarang. Yeah, the name is Vision. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let me begin from the start. Yes, it is Vision. Yeah. Okay, and this journal, the Vision Journal, also called as Journal for Language and Foreign Language Learning, and the frequency of the publication, we have 2 times in a year, in April and in October. Yeah, and for the citation analysis, or we call it akreditasi, we have Sinta 3, yeah, Sinta 3, and we are also indexed in the OAG, Directory of Open Access Journal and Dimensions. And the focus of this journal is the journal focus on the foreign language and foreign language learning, focuses on research-based articles on first, second, and foreign language learning. And the aim is to publish rigorous, original, empirical, and conceptual. And its scope is international in that it welcomes articles from academics and researchers, graduate students, and policymakers. And all of the articles submitted in this journal should be in English. And then we go to the scope. The scope of this journal are we have foreign language acquisition, and then translation and language learning. We have foreign language learning and identity. It also have gender and equality in English language learning. Foreign language skills, linguistic and English language learning, literature and English language learning, and foreign language teaching and learning. So if you have an article about that covers this scope, you can send us your article, and Mr. David will be happily what is it, waiting for your best articles. Yeah, Mr. David. And then for the reviewers, this is interesting because we are indexed in Sinta 3, but we have also quite amazing reviewers, yeah. And the peer review processes, we start from the processes. The Journal for Language and Foreign Language Learning, published twice in every volume in April and October. It is an international peer-reviewed journal. The process is subject to a single blind review process by a minimum of 2 reviewers. So it is single blind, yeah. So it is independent, yeah. And then we go to the editorial teams. We have teams in this journal. We start from the editors. We have the chief editors here is Mr. David Reza NTD, yeah, our moderator today. And he's been operating this journal for quite a long time, yeah, Mr. David. And for the managing editor, we have Mr. Agus Prayoga and me, myself. And now Mr. Agus Prayoga is studying in Monash University in Australia. Yeah. And next, we go to the editors for Asia Pacific regions. For Asia Pacific regions, we have Stephanie Shamila Pillai from Malaysia, and then Tranti Tutrang from Vietnam, Siti Nur Fahmi with those Scopus ID. It is come from Alauddin Makassar from Indonesia, and Dr. Fariha Javed from Pakistan. Yeah, all of them have Scopus ID as stated on the slide. And then next we go to the regional handling editors for Europe and other regions. Here we have some of the editors for Europe. Yeah. First we have Newton Jonathan from New Zealand, and we have Lawrence Junzang from New Zealand. And then next we have Andrew Pilo Minraj from Chile, and then Lyudmila Grizun from Ukraine. Yeah, all of them are an awesome editors. And then the last but not least, we have this is our offers to all of the submitters, yeah, from the writers, that we have proofreaders, and it is free of charge by professional proofreaders. Here we have Mr. Ardian Wahyu Setiawan from Polytechnic Negeri Malang, and pre-semantic proofreading, editing, and translation from Indonesia, and Mr. Nanang Zubaidi, PhD from Universitas Negeri Malang, Indonesia. They are also professional proofreaders. So it means that all of the process of proofreading is free, but we have quite a very good proofreaders. Yeah. So don't worry about your articles if you submit to our journal. Okay, and I think those are all of the information that I can share, but you can see by yourself or in our websites. Yeah, we are really waiting for your great writing your articles. Thank you, Mr. David. I think that's all from the promotion. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bu Dwi Arni.
Thank you. Yeah.
The last,
okay.
The last issue, actually, we don't have any Indonesian authors. Yeah. So all of them are from.
But great.
Yeah. I have to. What is it? I have to advertise Vision Journal because there is no Indonesian author in the last issue. Yeah, in the last issue.
Yeah. But
there are some authors from Indonesia.
Yeah. I hope the great authors from Indonesia will have a will to send their great writing to our journal, Mr. David, because we have a great authors. Yeah, actually. Thank you, Mr. David, for your time.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's very nice to have this time.
Reza, Kafipour, you can continue. Just
okay.
Just
so actually. I should thank you for the short time. That was a good rest for me before continuing the presentation. Okay. Let me share the file again. So we are going to discuss advanced level pronunciation activities. So some of the activities that we can use to teach pronunciation to advanced level learners, one of them is International Phonetic Alphabet Transcription Lesson. So it is a lesson focusing on continuing students' familiarity with the international phonetic alphabets in order to focus on the issue of connected speech in English. And the second one is using pronunciation activities from FluentU or other appropriate applications. So they make pronunciation fun with these clever ideas. I think one of the questions in the chat box was related to this point, that how can we teach pronunciation to our students in an interesting manner in order not to make them tired and make them interested in learning correct pronunciation. One of the answers is using pronunciation application. One of them introduced here, for example, FluentU. They are very effective in making students fluent in pronunciation and make them interested in practicing pronunciation. So from now on, we'll switch to our study to see how we collected data and what are the results of our study. So this study is a mixed method, has a mixed method design, providing a richer set of data and helping to overcome the limitations of questionnaire-based study, because our quantitative data is collected through an open-ended questionnaire. So it is very useful to use qualitative data collection procedure in order to enrich our data. So we try to select participants through convenience and snowball sampling. Through this technique, 47 EFL teachers were selected to participate in our study. If we want to see the percentage of these participants, something around 58% came from English institutes, 35% from high schools, and just something around 5% from a private university in Iran called Azad University. And all of the participant age was something between 20 to 50 years old. 24 males and 23 female students. If we switch to the academic degree, 24 were bachelor holders in English translation and English training, 22 master holder in English teaching, and just one PhD holder in English teaching. Regarding the years of experience, around 38% of the participants had more than 10 years of experience, 68% more than 5 years, 17% something around 1 to 3 years of experience, and 15% 3 to 5 years. But in qualitative phase, we use 15 EFL teachers with 2 up to 24 years of teaching experience in EFL or ESL context. That actually it refers to EFL context because of teaching in Iran that has a foreign language context, but the average years of experience was something around 9 years. So the students' first language was Turkish and the official language Persian, or what we call it Farsi. And all were teaching English as a foreign language, as I told you. And 8 of these participants in qualitative phase of the study were females and 7 males. 7 were master holders, 5 bachelor holders, and 2 of them had certificate in high school teaching, and 1 of them CELTA and Delta holder. To collect data, as I told you before, we use questionnaire in quantitative phase of the study. A modified version of the instrument developed by a group of researchers was used, and back translation was applied in order to check the validity of the questionnaire. After that, face validity was checked through getting the idea of 3 experts to see whether the items correspond with what they are going to test or not. And the reliability of the questionnaire was also checked through Cronbach alpha coefficient, that it was something around 0.87, that is within a good reliability index. So this questionnaire has 4 separate parts. Part 1, how much they have taught different aspects of pronunciation. So part 1 of the questionnaire tried to answer this question: how much the instructors or teachers have taught different aspects of pronunciation. The second part of the questionnaire evaluates how often different pronunciation activities are used. The third part evaluates teachers' beliefs and opinions about pronunciation. And the last part of the questionnaire investigate most serious pronunciation problems experienced by learners. So if we want to calculate the number of items in this questionnaire, it is a 74 close-ended questionnaire that elicits information on 4 main topics, as I told you. The first part, demographic information, 10 questions. Pronunciation, teaching practices, something around 38 questions. Opinions and beliefs about pronunciation, 21 questions. And level of training and confidence to teach pronunciation, 5 questions. And in the qualitative phase of the study, we use interview to collect data. The interview question belong again to the pattern developed by a group of researchers that you see it in the PowerPoint file. And the interview was used to increase the quantitative data or augment the quantitative data through gathering additional data about the participants' views of their perception and practices of pronunciation teaching in their classrooms. Data collection lasted for 10 weeks. First, the questionnaire was distributed among teachers, then interview was done. The interviews were transcribed and qualitatively analyzed to find common themes and categories. Each interview lasted for 9 to 20 minutes. And the collected data analyzed by Excel software, the mean score for each item of the questionnaire was calculated and compared across different items. Interview profile suggested by Sidman was used to analyze the interview data. And now let's go to the results. After collecting data and analyzing through Excel software, the overall result reflected in let's say a couple of tables, as you see here. So in research question 1, explore how often teachers taught different pronunciation aspects. 18 items of the questionnaire are related to the aspects of pronunciation teaching. So the table shows the percentage of teacher responses to each item regarding learner proficiency level. That if you look at the table, B stands for beginner, I for intermediate, and A for advanced learners, aligning with whether they are taught these aspects or not. Okay, for example, never or rarely, sometimes, often, and always, they are the options that provided to the respondent. In addition, items rated by teachers as never taught and always taught were highlighted in different colors to make it visually different from other parts of the result. To illustrate, dark green, light green, very light green, very light orange, and light orange and red represent the highest means toward the lowest means. So if I want to summarize the finding in this table, it can be concluded that something around 57% of the participants work on suffixes such as ed and s endings. 54% work on word stress. 53% work on syllable structure, and all of them mentioned often or always. But in the next part, something around 24% never taught pronunciation in the classroom, while 42% reported sometime they taught pronunciation in the classroom, and something around 32% reported that they often taught pronunciation in the classroom. In the next part, 36% never taught pronunciation to beginner level when we analyze the result based on the proficiency level of the learners. 36% of the participants that were instructors never taught pronunciation to beginner level. 27% sometimes taught pronunciation, and 36% often taught pronunciation to beginner level learners. In the next part, 15% never taught pronunciation to intermediate level, 62% sometimes, and 22% often taught pronunciation to intermediate level. So as you see, based on the proficiency level of the learners, the preference of the teacher in teaching pronunciation actually changed here. Regarding advanced levels, 20% never taught pronunciation, 38% sometimes, and 40% often taught pronunciation to advanced levels. So the next table shows how often teachers use different pronunciation activities that refer to the next research question. 15 items of the questionnaire are related to this issue as summarized here in this table. So if I want to summarize the results based on the table, the least frequent techniques were using mirrors, interactive media, and chanting. As you see, 70% never or rarely use mirror for students to observe their articulation. And 67% again never or rarely use interactive media, and 63% never or rarely use chanting. So we consider these three techniques as the least frequent techniques used by instructors in teaching pronunciation. And the last part, 49% often or always use drama and role playing, while 44% often and always use imitation and repetition. So they are among the techniques that more or less were used by the instructors in teaching pronunciation. So the next question refers to how often teachers use different pronunciation activities based on the proficiency level of the learner. So this table summarizes the result that I try to show you in this form. Actually, 43% never taught pronunciation to beginners, while 25% sometimes, and 30% reported that they often taught pronunciation to beginner learners of English. In next part, for intermediate levels, 33% never taught pronunciation, 45% sometimes, and 20% often. And the last one for advanced level, 40% never, 35% sometimes, and 23% of the instructors often taught pronunciation to advanced learners. The next part refers to Iranian EFL teachers' belief and opinions about on pronunciation learning and teaching. 17 items of the questionnaire provided some statement regarding beliefs and opinions on pronunciation, and asked teachers to express their level of agreement with these items that are all summarized in this table. So 85% of the participants like teaching pronunciation. 70% believe pronunciation should make the student comfortably intelligible to their listeners. 64% believe frequent exposure to good input is not enough for most learners to acquire pronunciation. 66% believe that native speakers should be the model for pronunciation teaching, and 36% believe that instruction could improve learners' communication in English. 77% reported that it is possible to teach pronunciation communicatively. So it is a finding against the theories we had, because theories said that communicative language learning cannot match with teaching pronunciation implicitly. But for our study, this theory rejected actually. 40% believe that eliminating foreign accent as much as possible should be the goal of pronunciation teaching. It refers to the effect of first language accent on learning pronunciation. And 30% believe that native English speaker is not necessarily the best person to teach pronunciation. This is what we as instructors believe actually, because you should know how to teach, but being a native speaker cannot guarantee that you are the best teacher to teach pronunciation. And 28% believe that some people resist changing their pronunciation to maintain their first language identity. 49% were neutral or unsure about this issue. And finally, 49% were uncertain whether a heavy accent could lead to discrimination or not. And finally, the last question addressed the most serious pronunciation problems experienced by students and reported by instructors. This table summarizes the findings. Based on the results, 69% reported stress as a problematic area in teaching pronunciation. 60% reported sound the as in thanks and the as in mother. 38 believe that rhythm of the word is problematic, while 35% believe that students' intonation is a problematic area in teaching pronunciation. And 18% of the participants that were English instructors believe that insertion of letter I or sound E as a syllable simplification strategy, for example, in appendices, was a problematic issue. And 51% believe that teaching pronunciation is complex, especially intonation, vowel sound, rhythm, and minimal pairs are the most difficult features to teach. But the next part, the next table, is working on most serious pronunciation problems reported for students with different level of proficiencies. As you see here, for beginner learners, 6% never found serious pronunciation problems, while 31% believe that sometimes, and 62% believe that they often found serious pronunciation problems for beginners. While for intermediate learner, it was 17% for never, 54% for sometimes, and 28% for often finding serious pronunciation problem. And when we switch to advanced learner, 40% of the participants reported that they never found serious pronunciation problem, 39 reported sometimes, and 20 reported that they often found serious pronunciation problems for advanced learners. When we switch to interpretation of interview findings, they are listed shortly here. As you see, pre-specified books, the school curriculum, and the time limitation do not let them focus on pronunciation as a separate lesson. So there are some barriers or obstacles in teaching of pronunciation based on perceptions of instructor. One of them, pre-specified book that normally teaching pronunciation ignore the other one, school curriculum that do not pay enough attention to the teaching of pronunciation, and the other one, class time limitation. The other finding, participants consider student level of proficiency when it comes to pronunciation teaching. So they believe that the level of proficiency of the student is an effective factor in selecting techniques or teaching a style when they want to teach pronunciation. So if you have a class with students of different proficiency levels, actually it will be a challenge for the instructor to teach pronunciation. And the next point, participants try to integrate pronunciation teaching with reading, speaking, and listening skills. So it shows they believe in integration strategy. They do not believe in teaching pronunciation alone. And next point, they didn't found a systematic approach to pronunciation teaching. And they dealt with pronunciation when it is part of the lesson in the book. So it showed the role of curriculum. When pronunciation teaching is not highlighted in the curriculum or in the books, actually it was also ignored by the instructor. They didn't try to work by themselves on pronunciation. And finally, the participants reported dealing with problems as they arise most of the time. Some other findings based on interview results, participants selected pronunciation teaching method based on the learner proficiency level, as we discussed before, but highlighted here. Most participants pointed out that back chaining is suitable for low level and minimal pairs for elementary and advanced learners. So when we say back chaining, it works with polysyllabic or difficult words and phrases. The teacher pronounces the last syllable, the student repeats, and then the teacher continues working backwards from the end of the word to the beginning. It is called back chaining teaching strategy. The next finding, some other participants stated that drills are very effective for beginners and intermediate level learners. And finally, they found videos and group work helpful in improving learners' pronunciation. As I told you, one of the interesting ways is to use Fluent U or other pronunciation teaching applications available in the market right now. So if we decide to summarize the finding and discuss what we found in this study, we should say that based on the language learning theories, the received input help learners acquire the target language. So it refers to the role of implicit instruction of pronunciation. The next point, if second language learners are exposed to large amount of comprehensible input, they might succeed in language learning. So it should be one of the roles of, let's say, English teachers to provide as much as possible, provide input as much as possible for the student, and they, let's say, pace the learners repeated exposure to the context. It helped them to become competent in English pronunciation. In EFL setting, where learners do not have enough opportunity to hear the native speaker model of the target language, teachers may attempt to maximize learners' exposure to the target language, as I discussed before, and encourage them to experience enough authentic oral discourse of the native speaker outside of the classroom. So they should not limit teaching pronunciation to the classroom. They should provide authentic material, oral material, and ask the student to work on the pronunciation and the material outside of the class as a, let's say, as a homework, or I don't know, out of class activity, something like it. And providing learners with enough exposure to the target language as well as extensive training help learners improve their perception and production of different target sounds. So all of them are actually the answer to the question raised in the chat box by one of the audiences. In this study, one of the major findings that is against the available theories is this point, that teachers believe it is possible to teach pronunciation communicatively, while let's say, the hypothesis or the theories available said it is not possible, and there is a mismatch between teaching pronunciation and communicative teaching and learning. Next point, if second language learners are exposed to large amount of comprehensible input, they might succeed in language learnings. As you see, we overemphasize on this point in different slides. So it shows that one of the major techniques in improving the students' pronunciation is repeated exposure to the context by, let's say, watching movies, watching, I don't know, clips, or working on application, anything that can provide repeated exposure to to English language. So teaching pronunciation via communicative practice requires the teacher to use open-ended tasks to negotiate meaning. Based on the results and literature, role play, storytelling, debate, and problem solving are practical communicative tasks that can help improve pronunciation. And finally, respondents believe that a native English speaker is not necessarily the best person to teach pronunciation. Yes, why? Because native speaker cannot teach you how to pronounce. Just this speaker can produce the word natively and correctly, but cannot discuss about the location of tongue, for example, or how to move, how to place your tongue between teeth or back the teeth in order to produce a specific sound. It needs, let's say, academic training that a native speaker may have or may not have. The next point, intelligibility does not correspond precisely with accentedness. It means EFL learners do not need to mimic native speaker pronunciation to be understood by natives. They can follow a standard accent is enough. They mainly use opportunistic teaching and integrated phases to teach pronunciation. So by they, here we are referring to our participants in this study. Teacher didn't have a systematic approach to pronunciation teaching, integrating pronunciation teaching with skills like reading, speaking, and listening. So it means if this curriculum emphasized on pronunciation, they try to spend time on working on pronunciation. Otherwise, actually, it was ignored in the class. And one of the problems highlighted by the participants was students' lack of interest and motivation, limited facilities and resources in institute, for example, English labs, learners' aims and goals. Sometimes there is a mismatch between learner goals to learn English and teaching goals of instructors. This mismatch may be a challenge or problematic. And the next point, differences between first language and second language sounds. Sometimes you do not have some specific sound in your own language. So it means that your vocal cords are not familiar with these specific sounds, and it is difficult for the vocal cord to pronounce them correctly. Actually, in adulthood, we say it is impossible to produce those sounds as similar to, let's say, native speakers. And last one, teacher limited knowledge and training. Sometimes the teacher themselves do not know how to teach pronunciation. It is really something different from teaching, speaking, listening, reading, and writing. You should have another skill to teach pronunciation correctly. So the last part of this presentation referred to the limitation and delimitation. Actually, data were gathered by means of questionnaire and interview. So if we consider other types of data collection instruments, we may have more, let's say, more truthful results. And the next point, we emphasize on perceptions of the teacher, not the actual practice. But we know that sometimes when we are focusing on perceptions, the respondent tried to say ideal points instead of real points, that it may lead to some different results. So some other researchers may try to test what the students actually do in the classroom by using some technique as journal writing or observation. Okay, actually we finished the presentation right now. I'm ready to answer any questions that you may have. Just we have one question in the chat box. They asked me how to teach pronunciation. Let me see. Yes, how to motivate the learners to learn pronunciation. As I told you, one of the best ways is using very interesting applications we have. One of them, Fluent2U, and some other types of application that work on pronunciation, and they are interactive. It means that you should have a headset, and when you pronounce the word, it guides you whether your pronunciation is correct or not. And even it tries to teach you how to move your tongue or for example, how to place your tongue and teeth in order to pronounce that specific sound correctly. This is the best technique that can motivate the learner to learn pronunciation without being tired or demotivated based on the nature of instruction. So I'm ready if you have any other question to answer.
Okay, Reza, actually teaching pronunciation is not only limited to segmental and suprasegmental features. Yeah, what we already know that segmental features are important, and then suprasegmental features are also important. But then sometimes we come across with some linking. Yeah, there is the so-called linking sound, merging sound, dropping sound, which are not really studied by learners. Yeah. But in reality, there are many linking sounds, yeah, that we come across. Yeah, for example, the sound of a cup of tea, for example. So we should say a cup of tea. Yeah. So the sound of schwa, like some students are not familiar with. Yeah. So for example, this is very crucial. Yeah, it is linking sound. And then the second one, merging sound. Yeah, this is also problematic. Sometimes we can check it out in a dictionary, because merging sounds, because you have one word and another word. Yeah, meaning that the pronunciation of these words are merged. Yeah. How to teach? Yeah. For example, linking sound, merging sound to your techniques. Yeah, can be applied. Yeah, in this case. Thank you, Reza.
You're welcome. Yes, you are right. Sometimes when we merge words, some specific sounds are deleted or changed in merging the word in a sentence. So the techniques that we have, first, some of them are based on regular grammatical issues. For example, we have some specific books that try to work on this point, how or which one of the sounds should be merged or changed when specific sounds at the end and beginning of two words that come after each other are attached. How should we merge them? The best way is to use such sources, as well as some specific multimedia sources that are available, and try to work practically on such issues. We have all of them available here. I don't know whether they are available in Indonesia or not.
You mean what is available, Reza?
Some specific books that try to work on a stress pattern in sentence level, how the words are merged, and what happened that a word, for example, ended in this specific sound attached to another word that is started by that specific sound, and how we should merge them, which one of the sound deleted here, or which one of them changed to another sound, for example. We have some materials that try to explain all these issues in the form of book, as well as some multimedia sources that try to practice them actually in real world, to show how different words are pronounced when they are attached to each other in sentence level.
Okay, I think we have also questions from the participants. Let me. Is it recommended to learn more than one language? More than one languages, yeah, at the same time.
Is it recommended to learn? Okay, so if we are normally most of the parents worried about their children, whether it is a good technique to expose their children to 2 or 3 languages. There is no problem at all, because based on the physiology and what happened in the brain in learning languages, all of them will be stored in different building blocks. So there would be no problem or no interference between the building blocks related to, for example, English language, French, and German. So we say a child can learn 3 or 4 different languages from the beginning, and no problem will happen to none of these languages. All of them can be learned completely, no problem.
Reza, that you said that your research is on, perceptions. Yeah. Can we have, a research on the actual, not only perception, the actual phenomena of teaching pronunciation, and to
right. Yes, I told you, one of the suggestions for further studies is to work on actual, what actually happened in the classroom by the instructor, teachers. So if we change data collection procedure and use, let's say, journal writing and observation techniques, we can consider what actually happened in the classes and what kind of techniques or strategies are actually used by the participants. So it can be another topic if someone is interested to work on pronunciation as a research project. Mr. I do not have your voice right now.
Can we have the same method, Reza, with the same method like the one you did, in your research?
So working on actual, what
yes,
happened actually?
Actual, yeah. On
great.
Can we use the same, the same method for actual phenomena or actual the actual classroom or the actual teaching pronunciation? What do you think? Or do
you mean how actually we can teach pronunciation, or see what actually instructors do in the classroom? Which one?
I mean the actual teaching of pronunciation in the meaning that you found out that there are some problems, and then there are some,
I got it right. See, if it is based on the level of our learners. If we are talking about younger learners, the only possible or the best effective technique is repeated exposure. So whatever you expose the learner to more input, so the output is would be more satisfactory. But when we are talking about adult learners, it differs. For adult learners, we should work on each specific sound. For example, in teaching, for example, the word tree and tree, that one of them refer to a plant, the other one refer to a figure, number. When we want to teach adult learners how it should be pronounced, first of all, we should consider their first language, whether that specific sound is available in their first language or not. If available, our task or our job would not be difficult. But if it is not available in their first language, actually we face with a challenge. Why? Because we should try to teach them how to pronounce them while they do not have it in their first language. For example, the sound p as pronounced in number 3 doesn't exist in Parsi or Persian. So it is very problematic for Iranian learners. I should teach them, let's say, anatomy and physiology first, how to move your time, for example, for 3, that refers to number, I should say, put your tongue on the back of the front teeth and the above teeth, and then try to pronounce the word while you are blocking the flow of air. So some parts of the sound actually move to your nose instead of, let's say, mouth. So I should work on this system, how the sound should be produced, because they didn't have it before, and they should learn it. But for the plant, I say you need to put your tongue between the upper and lower teeth and then pronounce it. For example, 3 for the plant and 3 for the figure or number. It is difficult for the learner. So you should first show the structure of mouth and teeth, and then say the tongue is divided into 3 different parts. Now, when you want to pronounce this sound, how you should place your tongue, or what is the position of tongue between teeth or on the back of teeth. All of them should be taught in the classroom. And we have a specific book that work on all this sound and anatomy of the mouth.
Okay, okay, Reza, there is another question from Aisyah Hamidiah. Yeah, is in teaching pronunciation, do you suggest the teacher to teach the received pronunciation or the change sounds proposed by Jenkins? Okay.
Let me see if I understood the question correctly. I feel that she's talking about the feedback, right?
The what? Feedbacks?
I think she's talking about the type of feedback, whether, for example, direct or indirect feedback is okay or not.
Okay, let me
because
ask. Let me ask Aisyah. Yeah, Aisyah,
okay.
Hamidiah, are you still here, Aisyah?
I'm sorry, I cannot open the camera. Sorry.
Could you please clarify your questions? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. I read Jenkins' proposals about changing sounds. For example, the th or the sounds can be changed into t or the and some of sounds. Yeah. So should we change also the teaching of the sounds to the students, because of our students are in the second second language learner, yeah, English second language learner, yeah. In my country it is as English for foreign language, so as EFL. So because of that problems, should we change first the sounds to teach our students, then we give the received pronunciations as proposed by IPA?
You mean the change of sound in the sound of t? Is that correct? What do you mean? And
yes,
then,
but not on, yes. But Jenkins also proposed for sounds f or v, that labiodental sounds probably because of some of learners cannot produce that sounds. So probably it sounds can be produced, p becomes bilabial. So my question is, should we teach that first to our students and then we give the actual sounds as proposed in IPA?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I think Reza, do you understand the
I
question?
mean, I'm sorry. I mean, it is to ease the teaching pronunciation to our students.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope I got the question correctly based on what you said. If you mean whether we should change the pronunciation of a student when they mispronounce the words when they are speaking in the classroom, is it the point?
Yes, correct.
Okay. See, it is based, again, it is based on the proficiency level of the student. For example, sometimes we say, when you are providing feedback, we have 3 different or 4 different feedback. One of them direct or explicit feedback, the other one indirect or implicit feedback, the other one immediate feedback, and the last one delayed feedback. So based on the proficiency level of the students, sometimes feedback, let's say, has a negative role if you try to change the pronunciation or correct the pronunciation of the learner at the same time quickly. Why? Because you are interrupting the student second by second, and it will damage the confidence of the learner. So it is very important and a kind of, let's say, skill and at the same time art for the teacher to consider the proficiency level of the student and see if providing the feedback will not damage the confidence in the beginning that they are trying to practice speaking. Okay, no problem. You may change or suppose the correct pronunciation at the same time, interrupt the student and provide the correct pronunciation, change it, or propose the correct one. But sometimes you see, if you provide feedback second by second, actually you are damaging the confidence of the learners and they try to stop speaking. Why? Because they fear of making lots of mistakes in the classroom and they try not to speak at all. So it will have a negative role in the classes, and we say no, do not provide the feedback first, wait for the students to speak and finish their speech, but you try to take note of the problems in their sounds, and at the end of the class, try to teach the class, not a specific student. For example, say, based on your lectures or presentations, I found that some of you or most of you have problem in pronouncing these sounds. Now let's practice them with each other. And you try to teach them how to pronounce them without referring to a specific student, because you do not want to, let's say, destroy their self-confidence. So we should be very careful in providing feedback and consider all psychological factors and emotional factors that may interfere with our teaching.
Okay, Ms. Aisyah, does it answer your question? Ms. Aisyah Hamidi?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Reza, I have also another question, Reza, relating to, the background discourse in a research. Actually, a background discourse in your research is quite interesting, meaning that few research on teaching pronunciations in Iran, especially teachers' perceptions. How can we have background discourse, yeah, in a research. If we as an author want to conduct a research, Reza, actually this is one of the most important thing to find the research gaps. You see, we have to explain the research, the background discourse, at least in the first paragraph in our introduction. Okay, come on, Reza.
Sorry, would you please repeat the main part of your question? You said, how can we
have research discourse? Research discourse is something like how can we find the research gaps? Yeah.
Research gap.
Yes. So we can explain in our introduction, meaning that there are this research, that research. You said that.
Yes.
Okay.
You mean how can we find a research gap first in order to conduct a new and effective research project, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. When we are talking about different types of research, we say we have some or article, we have review article, systematic review, or mega. So all of them actually refer to investigating or evaluating available research, not conducting a new research. So when you want to work on, for example, pronunciation, you are interested to work on a research that is related to pronunciation. You try to search for all available studies done before in your preferably in your own context, for example, Indonesia, and after that, let's say worldwide. When you collect all of them, you try to make an outline of objectives on a piece of paper or a Word file, doc file, a list of objectives, research questions, findings, and the limitation, delimitation. For example, you find 100 research done on pronunciation. When you make this list, it will be summarized to 1 or 2 pages. Then when you consider the findings and objectives of the studies done before, you find that which one of the areas received less attention or no attention in the previous studies. So that one is the specific gap that exists, for example, in pronunciation or in any topic. And then you can get it as a kind of area that needs further research and work on it. At the same time, all the studies that you collected will help you to formulate your design, your study design, to see what kind of, for example, instrument previous research applied in the studies, what kind of instrument didn't receive any attention or less attention, and you try to get that new instrument that other researchers didn't use. Because when you change the instrument, you may find new findings. Even you check the objective and you see a specific area in the objective of 100 research done before ignored or didn't receive a specific enough attention. So this outline will give you hints. When you read it, compare all objective related to, for example, 50 research done before, all results you found, all instruments used in 50 research done before, you find that one area ignored or received less attention, and you got that one as a gap in the available studies. Try to focus on that one and use it for your own study. So if you have any other questions.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions? If not, Reza, actually, I'm curious with the research gaps here. Actually, I have one article, Reza, and can I share this article? This article has been published, yeah, in a journal. Yeah. Okay, like this one, Reza. The impact of authentic materials on reading comprehension. This is Neil Rowlett, Taylor and Friends group. On reading comprehension, motivation, and anxiety among Iranian male EFL learners. And how can we identify that the author has already have an analysis of the research gaps, Reza, from the introduction?
Okay, you said how can we
find the the background, or let's say the research gaps from the introduction?
see, if you mean finding the research gap that introduced by this research, it is something else. But if you want to find a gap based on this research in order to initiate another research project, actually it is not possible to do based on one piece of research. You should try to find a group of research done before and see what they work on and find the gap or area that ignored or received less attention. This is another issue. It is not possible to find the gap in one specific article. But sometimes we say we want to say what this paper announced as a gap in order to do such a kind of study. This is another issue that we should read the introduction to see whether this point mentioned clearly, or sometimes we can imply it from the text, from the introduction part.
No, I mean, as an editor, Reza, as an editor, how can we know that this manuscript or this article has a very good quality or not? Yeah, based on the abstract and also based on the introduction, for example.
Right. So you mean what justified by the author as a gap to run such a study?
Yes.
Okay, so if we want to do it, we should go to the introduction section. Okay, we try to read it, and when I find it, I will tell you which paragraph or sentence we should pay attention to, okay?
Okay.
Okay, for example, consider the last sentence in second paragraph before going to next page. Here we said the language provided to students in the course books has long been regarded as a weak representation of the real target. So it is talking about somehow the current condition or the current situation. Let's go to the next page. Okay, here the reader is talking about the gap. Since the majority of the reading text in course book used in language institute are considered as inauthentic and designed to teach new grammatical construction, they do not necessarily address the needs of particular students. So if in the next part of the introduction that we will read it with each other, the author emphasized that this problem is also available in our own context, I don't know whether this study was conducted in Iran or Indonesia, each one of them. The context, so it refers to one of the problems that we have in this context, that majority of reading texts in course book used in institute are condensed or inauthentic. So we want to check this problem. When we say gap, it should be directly related to the problems we have that motivated us to run such a study, actually. But let's go again ahead to see what else the reader mentioned here. Would you please go to next paragraph?
Okay.
Would you please go ahead? Next page, please. Next paragraph. Next one.
Next page.
Next. As you see, as far as we read the text, all of them are referring to what others did in this issue.
The next page, Reza, is that
Would you please go to last paragraph, because normally it should appear at the end of introduction after summarizing what other did.
This is the last
finally
paragraph of the introductions.
Right. Okay, so if we decide to talk about this text and what mentioned as a research gap, we should point to authentic material based on what the author mentioned in previous paragraph. It talked about the, let's say, the significant role of the materials in this topic. So the impact of authentic material on reading comprehension. So it wants to say, whenever we want to have an effective reading comprehension, so the role of authentic material is something that should be overemphasized. So based on the body of research done before, the author concluded that the gap is related to the kind of text that we use in Iranian context. So we should check the text to see whether the problem related to, for example, low reading comprehension may be attributable to the text that we use in institutes, in any English classes or not. So this is the point.
Okay.
Actually, the gap is related to materials that we do not know whether they are effective ones or not in our own context in Iran. So we are going to do a research on, because some of the books in Iranian context are prepared by a specific institute, and they are shared among, for example, different English institute or different universities. But we do not have any independent research on authenticity of the material. So this is a gap. We want to have some independent research that in which we do not have any conflict of interest, and see whether this material is okay to be used or not. This is the point.
Okay, Reza, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think, do we have any other questions from the participants? If you have any more questions. From Bu Nadia, for example, my colleagues, yeah, Bu Mariam, Bu Tarwiyah, you have any questions on if what about if there is no question, Reza? I still have you know, questions about you know, this articles. I think, let's see. I think from, yeah, this article, Reza, I will share this article, and just to I just want to know, does this article have novelty or not? Yeah, from the abstract. Yeah, let me share screen, Reza. Yeah, this one, the contribution of teachers' humor in English as a foreign language classes in Vietnam, university students' perspective. The abstract here, let me read it. English as a foreign language, teachers tend to avoid humor in their classes, in the classrooms, due to subjective and objective reasons. However, many studies have shown that teachers' sense of humor plays an essential role in EFL students' learning process. Therefore, this study was conducted to determine students' perceptions of the impact of teachers' humors on their learning. In terms of methodology, data were collected through a 5-point Likert scale questionnaire, including 21 items and semi-structured interviews to reach the study's objectives. The study was conducted with the participation of 158 university students in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. The survey's result revealed that the students highly perceived the positive effect of the teacher's humor in EFL classrooms, especially reducing boredom, strengthening teachers' student rapport, decreasing sleepiness, promoting student cheerfulness, increasing students' consciousness, and solving conflicts in the classrooms. Additionally, non-major students were appreciated for teacher humor more than their counterparts. Moreover, students' perception positively correlated with their gender. The interview also showed that cultural factors affected the effectiveness of teacher humor in EFL classes. The paper also offered some pedagogical implication and suggestion. What do you think about this one, Reza?
Regarding the topic?
Yeah, in terms of novelty, in terms of the state of the art from this article.
Okay. You know, actually all topics related to cultural factors are very interesting because they may provide very different results. We call them culture-binded issues or culture-binded factors. So when we are talking about humor, many factors involved in, let's say, advantages and disadvantages, or effectiveness and not being effective in teaching. So based on the topic, it is very interesting because when we are talking about humor, for example, in our own culture, we should be very cautious in using humor in the class. For some specific ages or academic levels, it is very effective in teaching, but it is actually harmful for some other age levels or other academic level. For example, we say using humor in master or PhD classes is a very effective technique here. But if we want to use it in higher diploma level, associate level, or bachelor level, no, you cannot control the class at all. So we try to exclude humor from our teaching as one of the teaching strategies in the class. You know, it is completely depends on the culture level of social level of students, whether they are from, for example, higher class level or lower class level. We should consider the academic level, whether they are in bachelor, master, or PhD, undergraduate student, or, for example, postgraduate student. So it is a topic that we can investigate it from many different aspects. So when we say humor, cultural factors are on one side, individual differences are on the other side, affective factors the other side, you know, and social factors on the other side. And even it has some connection with personality traits. You cannot use humor in specific classes if you know that this class has a specific personality trait. So it is very interesting, and if some of the audiences are going to work on a research project, they can get humor and connect it with a couple of different factors in their study to make a new topic for their study.
Yeah, actually, if you want to know the the quality of the article, actually there are three, 3 points here, or 3 items. The first is novelty, and then the second is originality, and the third is clarity. Now, from this abstract, from your perspective, is there any novelty, and then originality and clarity from the title and abstract?
See, when we say novelty or contribution of an article to available literature, available knowledge, it is not something that we can identify by reading the abstract or just introduction. You know, sometimes novelty is related to the methodology of the research. You say this research is, let's say, examining a common issue based on a new, let's say, based on a new methodology, based on a new instrument. So it would be again novelty. So novelty will not refer to the topic itself to say this topic is novel. No, sometimes in the discussion you have novelty because you discuss about the findings from a new perspective that previous research didn't pay attention to. Sometimes you have novelty in your methodology. You followed a methodology that a few researchers try to follow. So you believe that based on this new methodology, you may find new findings. And sometimes maybe the most explicit one refers to the topic itself. So when we want to consider novelty, we prefer to read the whole manuscript and see if the author claims something new or showed something new in methodology, in result, or in the interpretation of the result or not. We should consider this point.
Reza, talking about result and discussion, Reza, what to my mind, results are, the answers of the research questions. Result only answers of the research question using, the methodology. And then discussion is what is it? Something that we have to show the our research among many research. What do you think about the difference between result and discussion, Reza? We ask
between results and discussion.
Yes,
right.
What are the differences?
You're right, because we see that sometimes, let's say, the author interchange both of them with each other. What they wrote as a result can be considered as discussion and vice versa. And mostly it happens that what they let's say, report as discussion is not actually discussion, it is conclusion. It is summary of finding. It is a common problem when we are reviewing the manuscript. See, when we say discussion, it means using critical thinking. It is something totally different from literature review or a conclusion. That conclusion is just summary of findings. In discussion, you try to use critical thinking and discuss possible reasons for your own finding. Why I found these results? What are the possible reasons behind, potential reasons behind? And then you try to connect your own findings with the findings of some similar or relevant studies done by other researchers. And again, not just say my study is against this one or is in line with that one. It is not enough at all. Then when you say these two studies are aligned, are in line with each other, for example, similar to each other, you should discuss the potential reasons for finding similar reasons between two different studies that may be conducted in different environment, different academic setting. What is the reason? And then when we say these two studies are different from each other based on their finding, okay, what are the possible reasons that these two studies found different results? They should be analyzed, and we call it critical thinking. Otherwise, you just are connecting some studies and you say this study is similar to that, our findings are similar to that study or are different from this study. Okay, so what? What is the role of this comparison and contrast? You want to show why my findings are similar to that specific study or different. Because when you say why, you are providing, again, new information that will fill the gap in the available knowledge. We are talking about some critical issues between two contexts, for example, to topic, to research. So this is, I can say, this is one of the problems in most of the manuscript, that maybe for 90% of the manuscript, that we say there is no discussion at all. What you wrote can be considered as literature review, a review of literature and a summary of your own finding, not more. And there is no critical thinking in your discussion section. This is the problem.
And then, Reza, Kafipour, what about the implication, Reza? Do we have to discuss the implication in the discussion or in
no
conclusion?
Right. Yes, in conclusion. In conclusion, normally you start by a summary of your findings, then you go to practical implications, because theoretical implication will be reflected in significance of the study, in introduction section, in the beginning of your manuscript. When you say, for example, our finding may be applicable for curriculum developers and book designers, for example, it is a kind of theoretical implication. You say that my finding may be used by these, let's say, private sectors, for example, or these responsible authorities in education, for example. But you still do not know what are your findings. So we call it a theoretical implication. But when you go to the conclusion, first you have summary of findings, and then you have implication, and let's say practical implication. Means what are the actual use of your findings in research or in teaching and learning process. So when, for example, when you find that suppose females communicative language teaching is more effective, for example, for females than males, you should say that institute, for example, in Iran, should separate their teaching method for female institute and male institute. For example, in female, they try to officially follow communicative language teaching, and in, for example, male institutes, support the other teaching method. And then you may have some mixed gender institute. Okay, so what? So for this institute, we should do this or that. You are practically talking about or discussing about your finding and how to implement your finding in a real academic setting, in a real institute in Iran, for example. So it refers to practical implication. And this one should be reflected in conclusion section, not in discussion. Discussion, just you discuss about possible reasons for your own findings, as well as possible reasons for differences or similarities between your own reasons and the findings of some other studies done by other researchers.
Can we use the same references for discussion and introduction, Reza? So
For introduction
yeah.
and right. Okay, you know, a small percentage of the references can be the same. But when you are searching the literature, you should find those which are suitable for discussion, put them aside. Do not mention them in literature review, because if you mention, and again you mention the same one, repeat the same one in discussion, it would be a case of redundancy. And we say you followed redundancy that is not allowed in academic papers. Otherwise, but sometimes you use some specific part of research for literature, and another part totally different from what you stated in literature. Use that specific part for discussion, no problem. You may have similar references, but you are talking about two totally different issues that this specific reference pointed out, no problem. But you cannot repeat the same issue that you, let's say, cited in literature, again, mention the same one in discussion in support of your finding. No, it is not allowed as a redundancy.
Okay, I think, thank you, Reza. And for all participants, you can fill in the Google Forms, yeah, to get e-certificate, yeah. So here, the link I share you in the chat box, yeah. Before we close, any other questions from participants? You can ask. If there is no questions from the participant, Reza, I think that's all, Reza. And thank you very much for your presentation. And see you again, Reza, on the next.
Thank you.
On the next occasion.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention, and nice to meet you all here. Have a good time.
Have a good time. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, goodbye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.